The siege of Gloucester is well documented and well known, but not so many people are aware of another local battle that preceded the siege. This was the Battle of Ludlam's Hill, Highnam, which took place in March 1643. Now, civil war, the 17th century English civil war was between the king and Charles I, who believed he had the divine right to rule, and the Parliament, who objected to being expected to rubber stamp his decrees when he needed money to fund his wars. The king declared war on Parliament in August 1642. His royalist followers mainly were members of the High Church and the nobility, and their peasants, and the peasants who worked for the nobility. The parliamentarians largely comprised Puritans, the middle classes, and tradesmen. Initially, the war went the king's way. He took the northeast of England, Wales, and much of the West Country. Gloucester was strategically placed at the lowest crossing point of the River Severn for access to Wales, from where he got many recruits for his army. Now, Parliament, realising this, sent Colonel Edward Massey, aged merely 23, to be the governor of Gloucester with 1,500 troops to form a garrison there. In February 1643, the king's nephew, Prince Rupert of the Rhine, with his cavalry, took Cirencester, and he sent an ultimatum to Gloucester. But Massey refused to surrender to, as it said, a foreign prince, and set about to reinforce the city in preparation for an expected attack. In March 1643, Lord Herbert of Raglan Castle raised an army of 2,000 Welshmen, and in order to support the king, moved them to Highnam, digging in at Ludlam Hill, near the present Highnam House and Holy Innocents Church. And he did this to provide a west flank on that side of the Severn in the expectation of a royalist attack on the city. Now, Massey was aware of this, of course, and stationed men at the Vineyard, the old bishop's palace at Over. Meanwhile, Sir William Waller, the parliamentarian commander in the west, having captured Malmesbury, made towards Cirencester as if to attack that now royalist town, but veered off westward and crossed the River Severn at Framilode on a Bailey bridge of boats. He then headed north to Huntley, then east to come up behind the Welsh at Highnam. Now, it is possible that he also sent some men up to Rudford on the Gloucester-Newent road to cut off any possible Welsh escape route. At the same time, Massey, with 500 men, attacked the Welsh from the east. The Welsh were then surrounded. There was a brief battle over 2 days. Some Welsh were killed, but most surrendered. Lord Herbert was absent for the battle, as he had gone to Oxford to consult with the king, and is said that he left a weak command structure at Highnam. Some 1,600 Welshmen were captured and taken to Gloucester, and most of them held in St Mary de Lode Church. With a population in Gloucester of around 5,000 at that time, and Massey's garrison as some 1,500, another 1,600 mouths to feed in a city preparing for attack was a problem. Massey's solution was to offer them a pardon if they agreed not to fight for the king again. Most took up the offer and went home. Whether they kept to the agreement or not is doubtful. Well, that was the battle, but to me the aftermath is the most interesting part of the story. What happened to the 400 who were not captured? Those who were killed at Highnam were probably buried there beneath this mound in the grounds of Highnam House. But did this account for all of the number? Now, what we know about events in history is dependent upon those who wrote the stories down. History is often called his story, or to be politically correct, perhaps her story. In a battle, there are two sides. One side, both sides being motivated to tell the story, putting their side in the best light. There are a number of conflicting accounts of this battle, particularly with regard to the bravery of the soldiers fighting and the numbers killed. If you drive along the B2145 Gloucester to Newent Road, about halfway along, you'll come to Rudford and Barber's Bridge. And there is a monument on the right-hand side of the road, which you might assume is a war memorial. Well, it is, but not for World War I or World War II. When digging the Gloucester to Ledbury Canal in the 18th century, bodies were found. Then, in 1837, whilst workmen were moving the top of a hillock to fill in a pond, another 86 bodies were found. Also, 6 bodies were found but buried in Rudford Church. W.P. Rice, the MP of Tiverton Court, at that time, had the bodies buried and a memorial set up on the site in 1871, with stones from the walls of Gloucester with these words inscribed on the base. These stones, taken from the ancient wall of the city of Gloucester, mark the burial place of the Welsh of Lord Herbert's force who fell in the combined attack of Sir William Waller and Colonel Massey on their entrenchments at Highnam, March 24th, 1643. So he believed they were Welsh. Waller's report, he wrote, indicated very few casualties at Highnam. Other conflicting accounts of the day claimed 400 parliamentarian deaths. Local memories handed down through the generations speak of a massacre of Welshmen. Other snippets of detail have been circulated. The area of Barber's Bridge was known at one time as Barberdones or Barbarous Cross. Just up the road is Camp Cottage. Before a bridge was built across the Red Brook, there was a ford, hence the name Rudd Ford or Red Ford. Could the red refer to shed blood during a massacre? Camp Cottage is a listed building and, according to Historic England, was built in the 17th century. Could this be on the site of a camp for soldiers guarding the ford? Are the precise details of what happened lost in the fog of war, or was there a cover-up? So, what really happened? Well, I can only but give you some suggestions. First of all, if Waller split his troops at Huntly, he may have left a guard at the ford to cut off an escape route for the Welsh. On the other hand, the Welsh may have posted their guard at the ford on the way to Highnam, only to be attacked by men that Walter had sent from Huntly. And thirdly, after the defeat at Highnam, some of the Welsh may have fled, pursued by Waller's men, and been massacred at the ford. Just 3 suggestions. You might have other ideas. I'll leave it to your imagination, but we will probably never know for sure. Before we leave the story, a few interesting details about Highnam Court. The original manor house and deer park was owned by the abbot of St. Peter's, Gloucester. At the dissolution of the monasteries, it was bought by John Arnold, then in 1605 transferred to Sir William Cook. In 1643, at the time of the battle, it was badly damaged and was rebuilt in 1658 by William's son. Then it was passed to the Guise family. And then in 1838, it was bought by Thomas Gambier Parry, who was an artist, a musician, and an art collector. He laid out the gardens and built Holy Innocents Church. Unfortunately, in the last century, the gardens were left unattended until Roger Head, the present owner, restored them to their present glory. Thomas Gambier Parry built Holy Innocents Church and consecrated it in 1851. The craftsmanship is exceptional. No expense was spared by Parry. He also designed and painted superb wall paintings inspired by those he had seen in Italy. Both the gardens and the church are well worth a visit. Sir Charles Hubert Hastings Parry was born in Bournemouth in 1848. Generally known as Hubert, he was the sixth son of Thomas. Unfortunately, his mother Isabella died shortly after his birth, but he grew up at Highnam Court. He learned to play the organ in Holy Innocents Church, and he became a teacher and prolific composer. His most familiar tune is Jerusalem, set to the words of William Blake's poem, "And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green?" considered by many as England's unofficial anthem. He also wrote other well-known pieces, for example, Blessed Pair of Sirens, and hymn tunes such as Repton and the lesser-known Ludnam Hill, in recognition of his youth at Highnam. In 1872, Hubert married Elizabeth Maud Herbert. Now, where have you heard that name before? Well, she was a direct, albeit distant, descendant of the very Lord Herbert who brought his Welshmen to their defeat at the Battle of Highnam 200 years earlier. There were 22 generations between them. There's 8 there, you don't go read those all the way through, and there's another 14 there. I conclude this talk by reflecting on the pain of civil war, where families and friends find themselves on opposite sides, and leave you with a following letter written by Parliamentary Commander Sir William Waller to his longtime Royalist friend Sir Ralph Hopton, who found themselves on opposite sides of the war, and they even fought each other at the Battle of Lansdowne Hill in Bath, near Bath, on the 5th of July 1643, only 3 weeks after this letter was written. That great God, who is the searcher of my heart, knows with what a sad sense I go upon this service, and with what a perfect hatred I detest this war without an enemy. But I look upon it as sent from God, and that is enough to silence all passion in me. We are both upon the stage and must act such parts as are assigned us in this tragedy. Let us do it in a way of honour and without personal animosities. 16th of June, 1643. Thank you for listening. If you want to look more about the Battle of Highnam, then probably that first acknowledgement there, Proceedings of the Cotswold Naturalist Field Club, Volume 6, is the best place. A lot of the other quotes from the other places you will find there.